In the middle of the night, a terrified boy escapes from a hospital, holding the only proof that his sister was still alive. What he revealed to the police uncovered a secret darker than anyone could imagine. Before learning this secret, don't forget to click the like button below and subscribe. The clock struck almost 3 a.m. when Tomas slowly pushed open the metal door at the end of the hallway. The hospital was silent, so quiet that he could hear his own heart beating fast inside his chest. He was wearing only that thin hospital gown, the same one he had been wearing since he was admitted with his sister. He had no shoes and felt the cold floor with every step. Tears ran down his face, mixed with sweat from fear. Tomas was trembling, not only from the cold of the early morning, but also because he couldn't get what he had seen that night out of his head. He knew that if he stayed, he could be next. Then he took a deep breath. He looked back once more at the door of the room where his sister had been just a few hours earlier, and began to run down the emergency stairs. He didn't want to make any noise, but his feet pounded loudly on the steps. The fear hurt more than anything else. With each floor he descended, he remembered what he had heard while hiding behind the bathroom door. Those men talked about Isabel like she was just a cost to the hospital. "Apply the same protocol," they said. That phrase hurt him more than an injection. Tomas didn't fully understand what they were doing, but he knew it wasn't good. He knew they had taken his sister away alive. He saw her. When he reached the ground floor, he pushed the last emergency door with all his strength. An alarm sounded softly for 2 seconds, but it didn't stop. He ran out into the dark parking lot, not knowing where to go. The sky was cloudy, and only a few streetlights were still on. The city was asleep, but Tomas's heart was screaming. He could only think of one thing: running away, escaping from that place before they caught him. His eyes were still red from crying so much. His sweaty hands clutched a bracelet he had taken from his sister hours earlier. Her name, Isabel, was written on it. He held it as if it were the only thing he had left of her, and in a way, it was. As he ran along the empty sidewalk, barefoot, his legs already tired, he spoke softly to himself, as if making a promise. "I'm going to tell. I swear, Isa, I'm going to tell everyone what they did to you." And so, in the middle of the night, barefoot and heartbroken, Tomas disappeared into the dark streets, carrying a secret that could change everything. Minutes after Tomas escaped, a nurse entered the room and saw that the bed was empty. She looked around, thinking that maybe he had gone to the bathroom. She called his name twice. "Tomas, are you there, kid?" But silence answered louder. When she opened the bathroom door and saw that it was also empty, a chill ran down her spine. She ran to the reception desk. Her voice was shaking. The boy in room 307 was gone. At that moment, the guards were called over the radio. The doctors left their posts. Lights came on in the hallways. Doors were opened hurriedly. One of them asked loudly, "What do you mean he's gone? He was under observation. He couldn't leave on his own." They shut down the elevators and checked the security cameras. The head nurse was shouting orders everywhere. It was as if time had stopped in there, and no one, really no one, could explain how a 14-year-old boy, weak and feverish until a few hours ago, had disappeared without a trace. The CEO appeared with a worried look on his face, but also with fear. "This is going to cause problems. Call the police now," he said in a low voice, almost swallowing his words. The news of the escape began to spread through the hallways. Some patients woke up to the noise. A woman in the next room said to her daughter, "It's the boy with the purple bow. He always spoke fondly of his sister. Poor thing." Shortly after, 2 patrol cars arrived with their sirens off. An older police officer asked for the boy's name, what he was wearing, what he looked like. The nurse replied, "Tomas, he's thin. He has brown hair. He was only wearing that hospital gown and he was in a bad way." Meanwhile, at the reception desk, a worker stared intently at the cameras. In one of the videos, Tomas could be seen leaving through a side door, barefoot and in a hurry. She pointed to the screen and said, "He went out that way." My God, the boy was crying. The atmosphere in the hospital was heavy. No one spoke loudly. The silence was filled with fear. And deep down, even if they didn't say it, some already knew that this was not just an escape. It was a cry for help, a sign that something very serious had happened inside. Tomas ran without knowing where to go. The night was dark, the street was dimly lit, and the cold wind cut through his skin. Still, he didn't stop. His bare feet hurt every time they touched the asphalt, but he didn't even feel it anymore. Fear was greater than anything else. He crossed streets without looking both ways, without thinking about whether a car was coming, without thinking about anything. He just wanted to run away, far away from that hospital, far away from the men who had taken his sister. In his right hand, he was clutching something so tightly that his fingers were leaving marks. It was Isabel's identification bracelet, one of those they put on patients when they arrive at the hospital. On the back, he had written with a pen, "My sister, Isabel." That bracelet was all he had left of her now, a small piece, but full of love and pain. As he ran, the image of the men with the syringe in their hands would not leave his mind. That phrase still rang in his ears. It's going to be very expensive for the hospital. He didn't quite understand what they meant by that, but he knew that after they gave her the injection, Isabel went limp and didn't respond. And when he wanted to scream, he hid. From fear, a fear that left him frozen for a few seconds. Seconds that changed everything. The tears came back. Tomas didn't know if he was crying out of fear, anger, or sadness. It was all of those things together, and the only thing that came to his mind was the image of his sister smiling. She always said, "You are my brave brother. I like it when you take care of me." And now he felt like he had failed her. As he walked through an empty square, he tripped over a branch and fell to his knees. He stayed there for a few seconds with his hands on his face, crying quietly. His body was shaking. He didn't know what to do anymore. But there was one thing he did know. He wasn't going to let them forget Isabel. He wasn't going to let them say it was just a normal death. He saw it. He knew the truth. He got up slowly, wiped his face with the sleeve of his shirt, and kept walking. He wasn't running anymore. He was tired, but he still kept going. The bracelet was still firmly in his hand, and his heart was in so much pain that he felt it breaking inside. Still, he kept walking because deep down, a little voice inside him was saying, "Keep going, Tomas. You can still save someone." The day was slowly beginning to dawn when a woman walking with her little dog saw something strange in a corner of the square. She approached cautiously and saw a child crouched behind a tree, hugging his knees with his face hidden. The dog barked, and the child was startled. He turned quickly, as if expecting someone to hurt him. The woman moved away a little and called the police. She just said, "There's a child here all alone. He seems to be hurt. He's crying a lot." Shortly after, the patrol car arrived. The police officer who got out was a man with a calm voice. He already had gray hair and walked slowly so as not to scare the child. He crouched down nearby, without getting too close. He looked at him carefully and spoke kindly. "Hey, are you okay, son? Everything is fine now. No one is going to hurt you." Tomas didn't answer. His body was shaking from cold and fear. The icy early morning wind was still blowing, and his hospital clothes were already wet with sweat and tears. He clutched his sister's bracelet tightly in his hand, as if it were the only thing that could protect him. The police officer took another slow step, took off his jacket, and held it out to him, still crouching down. "Look, take this so you don't get cold. Can you trust me?" "Yes," Tomas whispered, looked at him with eyes full of pain. He said nothing, just let the jacket cover his shoulders. And then, as if that small gesture had broken down a barrier, he began to cry harder, a free cry, full of suffering, as if everything inside him was coming out at that moment. The policeman remained silent, respecting his pain. Then he asked, "What's your name, son?" Tomas tried to speak, but his voice came out low, almost soundless. After a few seconds, he managed to say, "Tomas, it's okay, Tomas. You're safe now, I promise." But the boy shook his head and said between sobs, "If they take me back, they'll do the same thing to me." Those words froze the officer's heart. He didn't understand at first, but he instantly sensed that something was very, very wrong. He approached carefully, touched the boy's shoulder, and said, "We're not going to take you anywhere you don't want to go. Just tell me what happened." "Yes," Tomas just cried. He clutched his sister's bracelet even tighter and whispered, "They took her. I saw it. I saw it." Little by little, the The police officer understood that this child wasn't just running away, he was asking for help. And in that moment, in that corner of the square, something much bigger than an investigation began. A truth began that was difficult to hear, but impossible to ignore. And that was just the beginning. The police officer knelt there in front of the child, not knowing what to say for a few seconds. Those words hung in the air like a heavy weight. If they take me back, they'll do the same thing to me. Tomas's voice was soft but full of fear, as if he had been holding it in for a long time, trying to be strong, enduring everything on his own, but now he couldn't take it anymore. The police officer looked at his partner, Officer Camila, who had just arrived. She was also surprised by what she heard. The two looked at each other and understood that this child was not just scared of being away from home. It was much more serious than that. Camila crouched down, looked him in the eyes, and spoke calmly. "What did they do to you, Tomas? Can you tell me? I'm here to help you." "Yes." Tomas took a deep breath, but it was as if he couldn't breathe. He was squeezing his sister's bracelet so hard that his fingers turned red. His face was still wet with tears, but he began to speak slowly, as if reliving every bit of the pain. They took my sister away. They said she was going to be too expensive for the hospital. I heard it. I was in the bathroom, and the door was half open. When I looked, I saw two men with a syringe, and then she wasn't moving anymore. He closed his eyes tightly, as if he could still see it in front of him. The memory was so strong that it seemed as if he were still there, seeing everything again. And then they took her away. They said she was dead, but she was alive. I saw her. Camila covered her mouth with her hand, felt her chest tighten, turned to the police officer, and said in a low voice, "This is not a fantasy." He saw something serious, very serious. Tomas took another deep breath and finished between sobs. "If I stayed, and they were going to do the same thing to me," I heard one of them say it. "They knew my mom was asleep on the other floor, tired, and that no one would notice." Camila then put her hand on the boy's shoulder and spoke firmly. "Tomas, you're not going back to that place. I promise you. I'm going to stay with you, and no one is going to touch you." The boy still looked at her with fear, but for the first time since they found him, his eyes showed a small sparkle, as if in the midst of so much fear, a little bit of hope was born there, a thread of faith that someone was finally listening to what he had to say. From that moment on, Camila was no longer just a police officer. She was the heart the boy needed at that moment, and he, without knowing it, was about to tell a truth that would change everything, a truth that was hard to believe, but impossible to ignore. Camila stood there in front of Tomas for a few seconds, feeling a knot in her chest that she couldn't explain. It wasn't just because he was scared, or because he was alone in the middle of the night. It was the way he talked about his sister, the fear in his eyes, the way he hugged that bracelet. Something told her that this was serious, very serious. Without saying a word, she bent down again, took off the jacket she was wearing over her uniform, and carefully wrapped the boy in it. The fabric was warm from her body, and Tomas curled up inside it as if it were the first time he had felt a little protection since everything happened. "Come with me, Tomas. We're going to a safe place. I want to hear everything you have to tell me." He looked her in the eyes, his eyes still full of tears, and then nodded very slowly. He didn't say anything, but took a step forward. Camila took his hand gently, as if she were holding something very fragile, and it was. Inside the patrol car, silence filled the air. Tomas leaned back in his seat, clutching his jacket to his body as he looked out the window, as if he were still afraid that someone would appear. Camila drove carefully. From time to time, she looked in the rearview mirror with concern. She had handled many cases, but this one was different. It was as if something about it touched her in a way she couldn't explain. When they arrived at the police station, Camila didn't take Tomas straight to a cold interrogation room. She took him to a smaller room with an armchair and blankets. She asked a colleague to bring him a hot cup of tea, the kind that smells like anise. She wanted him to feel safe there. She sat down next to him and said in a soft voice, "Tomas, we have time now. Tell me everything from the beginning. I want to understand." "Yes." Tomas took a deep breath. He was still shaking a little, but he began to talk. He told her about the hospital, about his sick sister, about his mother, who stayed there every day, exhausted, sleeping on the chairs in the hallway. He told her that that night, he had asked to stay with Isabel so that his mother could rest. He told her that he had gone to the bathroom, and when he came back, he saw 2 men near his sister's bed. He told her about the injection, about her body going limp, about the men taking her away, and about him hiding behind the door in fear. Camila listened to everything with a heavy heart. Every word Tomas said felt like a blow, and as he spoke, she only confirmed what she had felt from the beginning. He wasn't making anything up. The pain he carried was real. The fear was real. And more than that, there was something very ugly hidden in that hospital. When he finished telling his story, Camila grabbed a piece of paper, wrote down the name of his sister Isabel, wrote down the name of his mother Luciana, and promised him, "Tomas, I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to take care of you and find out what they did to your sister. You're not alone anymore." Yes. The boy just closed his eyes for a moment, and in that silence, Camila understood that from that moment on, she was no longer just a police officer on duty. She was now the only person Tomas could trust, and she wasn't going to let him down for a second. Tomas remained silent for a while, sitting on the couch at the police station with the blanket still over his shoulders. His eyes were red, but he looked calmer. Camila sat silently by his side, waiting. She knew she couldn't rush things. Some truths take time to come out of the mouth, and even longer to come out of the heart. After a long sigh, Tomas began to speak in a low voice, almost a whisper. My mom was already very tired. She had been sleeping in the hospital for days. Sitting in a hard chair, Isabel was hospitalized for her lungs. She had trouble breathing, but she still smiled at me. She always told me she was going to get better, that we were going to get out of there together. And that night I asked my mom to go home and sleep. I told her I would stay with Isa. She just needed to get some rest. Camila listened attentively, writing down notes slowly, without interrupting. It was around 3 in the morning. I got up to go to the bathroom, and when I came back I heard voices. Everything was dark in the hallway, except for a small light. The bedroom door was half open. I was about to go in, but I stopped when I heard them. Tomas swallowed hard as if he were having trouble continuing, clutched the blanket with his hands, and closed his eyes for a moment. One of them said, "This one is also going to be very expensive for the hospital. We're going to do the same thing." He paused and looked at Camila with tears in his eyes. They had a syringe. I saw it, Camila. They were standing next to Isabel's bed, and she was still awake. She was scared. Camila put her hand on his shoulder affectionately, without saying anything. I stood still. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run to save her, but I was afraid. And then I saw them give her the injection. She went limp, stopped moving, and the 2 of them simply picked her up and left the room, as if she were just another body. The tears began to fall again. Tomas covered his face with his hands, and the sound of his crying filled the room. Camila also swallowed her tears. This wasn't a made-up story. It was real pain. A 14-year-old boy who watched his sister being taken away, without being able to do anything, who carried a guilt that wasn't his alone. I waited a while, and then I ran away. I knew that if I stayed, they would do the same to me. They said that now I was the only one left, and that the expense would be even greater. Camila got up slowly, went to the door, and asked that no one come in for a while. Then she came back, sat down next to him again, and said firmly, "Tomas, you were very brave. No child should have to go through that. But you did what you could. You ran away. And now you've told us everything. I promise you. Isabel will not be forgotten. We're going to find out the truth. I'm with you." Tomas didn't answer, but for the first time he let his head rest on her shoulder. They stayed like that for a few minutes. Only the sound of breathing, only the silence of someone who needs love, care, and justice. As soon as Tomas finished telling her everything he had seen that morning, Camila got up, took a deep breath, and went straight to her office. She picked up the landline phone at the police station and called the hospital. She wanted an explanation. She wasn't going to let this pass as if it were normal. On the other end of the line, a woman with a serious voice answered and introduced herself as the supervisor of the children's ward. Camila spoke directly, without beating around the bush. "I need information about the patient, Isabel Romero. She was admitted to the pediatric ward. Her brother escaped from the hospital early this morning and told me something very serious." The woman responded firmly, as if she already knew what she was going to hear. "The girl died during the night, ma'am. It was a very difficult case. Advanced lung disease. We had complications. It was a peaceful death." Camila clutched the phone in her hand, glanced sideways at the door to the room where Tomas was waiting, and continued. "Her brother was in the room. He says he saw 2 men inject her with something and then take her away. That was before any news of her death. He insists she was alive." On the other end of the line, the woman sighed and replied calmly, as if she had practiced it. "Traumatized children often create confusing memories. He's in shock, which is normal, but we have everything on record. The cause of death is in the system. Severe pneumonia. She died at about 3:20 and was transferred immediately." Camila felt her stomach churn. The times didn't add up. Tomas said he saw his sister being taken away shortly after 3. How could they have recorded the death so quickly, without a farewell protocol, without even calling the girl's mother? "Did they notify Isabel's mother?" she asked. "The hospital contacted her in the morning. We informed her that the body would be prepared for burial," the woman replied coldly. Camila hung up the phone slowly and stared into space for a moment in silence. The coldness of that response, the calm tone, the certainty in the words, everything seemed rehearsed, as if it were a memorized script. But what Tomas had told her was not a fantasy. It was a vivid, painful memory, full of details that no one would invent. She returned to the room where the boy was waiting. He looked up when he saw her enter and asked hopefully, "Did they say anything? Did they say where she is?" Camila walked over to him, crouched down, and gently took his hands. She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to break his heart even more. "They said your sister died in the early hours of the morning, but I don't believe that story, Tomas. Nothing adds up. I'm going to look into this calmly, I promise." Tomas squeezed her hands tightly and replied with a broken voice, "She was alive, Camila. I saw her. She was scared, but she was alive." And at that moment, Camila was sure. She had to investigate further, because behind that rehearsed response from the hospital, there was a hidden truth, and it was time to bring it to light. Camila spent the entire afternoon remembering everything she had heard from Tomas. His words wouldn't leave her head, the way he recounted every detail, the fear in his eyes, his firmness. Even though his voice was weak, everything seemed too real to be just imagination. She knew she had to check every point, so she grabbed the hospital records, requested the official reports, the schedules, the papers that showed when and how Isabel had died. She sat down at the table with everything open in front of her and began to read carefully. And that's when she noticed something strange. According to the official document, Isabel had died at 3:20 in the morning, but Tomas said he heard the men enter her room at around 3 and saw her with his own eyes when they took her away minutes later. Camila looked up from the paper and spoke to herself. This doesn't add up. She grabbed a piece of paper and wrote down the times. She compared it with the security camera that recorded Tomas leaving the hospital. He appears in the images at exactly 3:22 a.m. In other words, if Isabel had died at 3:20 a.m., as they said, Tomas would have had to see everything in a matter of seconds and run out immediately. But from the way he told it, that took longer. He talked about hiding, waiting, deciding to escape, all that couldn't have happened in 2 minutes. Camila grabbed the phone and called the hospital again. She asked to speak to the head of the records department. When the man answered, she got straight to the point. "I need to confirm the exact time of death of the patient, Isabel Romero. Are you sure it was at 3:20? On the other end, the man hesitated a little. Then he replied, "That's what's in the system. It was recorded just after the 3 o'clock shift change." Camila felt her anger rising. The answer was very vague, uncertain, as if they had invented a time just to make it fit. But someone signed it. A doctor? A nurse? Yes. It was Dr. Vargas, but he finished his shift shortly after. Maybe he doesn't remember everything. The call went silent. Camila wrote down the name, Dr. Vargas. She was going to talk to him in person. It smelled like a lie. She returned to the room where Tomas was resting, already lying on a sofa, covered with the same coat she had given him. He looked calmer, but his gaze was still lost. When she approached, he slowly opened his eyes. "Did you find out anything?" he asked softly. Camila sat down next to him, put her hand on his, and replied sincerely, "I found out that what you said makes more sense than what they said. The timings don't add up. There's something strange about this story, Tomas, and I'm going to find out what it is." He looked at her, and for the first time gave her a small, shy smile, but one full of hope. And in that moment, Camila knew she was on the right track, and that the truth, however hard it might be, had to come out, because Isabel deserved to be remembered with dignity, and Tomas deserved to have peace in his heart. It was late when they finally found Luciana. She was in the same hospital, exhausted, asleep on one of those hard benches in the hallway where she had spent the night. She knew nothing. No one had told her that her son had run away. No one had told her anything about her daughter. When the police entered the area and asked for Luciana Romero, a nurse pointed to the woman lying under a thin blanket, her face turned toward the wall, her eyes swollen with exhaustion. Camila approached slowly, knelt beside her, and touched her arm gently. "Mrs. Luciana, is that you?" Luciana slowly opened her eyes, still not understanding, and sat up. "It's me. What happened? Did something happen to Isabel?" The police officer took a deep breath, trying to find the right words, but there was no easy way to say it. He looked her in the eyes and said very carefully, "Your son Tomas ran away from the hospital early this morning. We found him. He's fine. He's safe with me now. But he ran away because he saw something very serious." Luciana's eyes widened, and she put her hand to her mouth. "My God, my son ran away. Why? Where is he? He's with us in a safe place. But he told us something. He saw Isabel being taken away by 2 men. He said she was still alive." Luciana fell silent. She felt a lump in her throat. Her face turned pale. She looked around as if searching for some answer in the air. After a few seconds, she asked, her voice trembling, "What do you mean they took her? Last night they told me she was stable, that they were going to keep her under observation." Camila took her hand affectionately. "The hospital says she died early this morning, but the times don't add up, and Tomas saw it. He saw everything." The woman clutched her head with both hands. Her eyes filled with tears and began to breathe rapidly. She felt the floor disappear. Camila noticed and tried to hold her up, but it was too late. Luciana lost her balance. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted right there. In the arms of the police, Camila screamed for help. Some nurses ran over, brought a stretcher, carefully lifted Luciana up, and took her to the next room. After a few minutes, she woke up with a weak voice, crying non-stop. "My daughter, my little girl, if my child is alone on the street, why, my God, why?" Camila stayed with her the whole time, held her hand, and said firmly, "Mrs. Luciana, I swear, I'm not going to leave it at that. I'm already investigating, and you're going to see your son right now. He just needs you close by, and you both deserve to know the whole truth." Luciana closed her eyes and cried silently. The pain of losing a daughter and almost losing her son was more than anyone could bear. And at that moment, Camila realized even more clearly that this wasn't just a case. It was a family destroyed by something that had to be revealed, and she was going to see it through to the end, even if she had to do it alone. When Tomas saw his mother walk through the door of the police station, he ran without thinking twice. Luciana opened her arms and hugged him tightly, as if she would never let him go again. They hugged for several minutes, crying together, letting the pain out without shame, without fear. Camila stood nearby in silence, respecting the moment. It was the meeting of 2 wounded hearts trying to reunite. Tomas looked his mother in the eyes, his face red and his voice trembling. "Mom, they lied. They said Isabel had died, but she was alive. I saw her. I swear, Mom. They put something on her and took her away. And now they say they've already cremated her, that there's nothing left." Luciana, who was already very upset, felt like her world was falling apart. Her eyes filled with tears again, and she had trouble breathing. "They took her away without telling us anything, as if they had already cremated her. I am her mother. I had the right to see my daughter." Camila tried to calm her down, but there was no time. Luciana went straight to the hospital with Tomas by her side. determined, her chest filled with pain and anger. She entered the reception area, went to the administration office, and demanded an explanation. "I want to see my daughter. Where is she? I want to see her with my own eyes." An employee tried to remain calm and responded coldly, as if reading from memory. "Ms. Luciana, the body of patient Isabel Romero has already been sent for analysis. It is in the biopsy stage. When it is ready for burial, we will contact you." "Hide what?" Luciana shouted, slamming her hand on the counter. "They didn't tell me anything. She was my daughter. I was here in the hospital. How could they hide that from me?" The employee looked away and continued speaking in the same tone. "You need to go home now. It's better to rest. Call your family and prepare everything calmly. We will contact you as soon as possible." Luciana took a step back, as if she had been hit in the chest. Tomas grabbed her hand and squeezed it tightly. "Mom, Isabel was alive. I saw her. They did something to her, and now they want to hide it." Luciana began to cry loudly in the middle of the reception area. People looked, but no one approached. She knelt on the floor with her hands on her face, repeating, "I just wanted to say goodbye to my daughter. That's all. Why didn't they let me?" Camila arrived a few minutes later, lifted her up gently, and hugged them both. Tomas was shaking, and Luciana couldn't stop crying. At that moment, it was no longer just a suspicion. It was the certainty that something very serious had happened there. The pain of that mother and that child was not only because of the loss, it was because of the theft. They had been robbed of the opportunity to say goodbye. They had been robbed of their last memory. And Camila, her eyes filled with tears, knew that it couldn't stay that way. The truth had to come out, whatever the cost. Camila left the hospital with a heavy heart, but her mind made up. She knew that something very wrong was going on in there. The answers didn't add up. The faces were too cold. Everything seemed very rehearsed. This was not normal mourning. It was forced silence. It was hidden pain. In the police car, she slowly took off her uniform and put on a large blouse and simple sweatpants. She tied her hair differently, put on a cap, and tied a jacket around her waist. It was important to go unnoticed. She wanted to see with her own eyes, to feel in the atmosphere what was not in the papers. She entered the hospital as if she were visiting someone. She walked calmly and unhurriedly through the reception area, carrying a small bag of fruit, as if it were for a hospitalized relative. When she entered the children's ward, the air felt heavier, the lights colder, the corridors too clean, the employees' gazes lost. Something hurt there, even though no one said anything. She walked slowly, observing everything. Some children were asleep, others were looking out the window. A girl was playing with a piece of torn cloth, and the sound of the television came softly from one of the rooms. Camila approached the wall and stood there listening to a quiet conversation between two nurses. "The boy is with the police now," said one. "There's going to be trouble." "He saw everything," replied the other. "They're already trying to cover it up. They say management will change the records in the system. We just can't let this blow up." Camila felt her stomach tighten. They didn't say Tomas's name, but it was clear they were talking about him. The boy who complicated everything. That phrase kept running through her head. A child shouldn't complicate anything. A child should be cared for, protected, but there they treated him as if he were a problem. She moved away, carefully, pretending to look at the flowers in a vase when one of the nurses passed by her and looked at her too quickly. Camila lowered her head, but it was too late. He recognized her. She kept walking, trying not to show anything. A few minutes later, near the emergency staircase, she felt a light touch on her arm. It was the same nurse. He quickly put a folded piece of paper in her hand and said quietly, "I remember you. Hey, I saw you at the police station the other day. Please meet me in the parking lot near the side exit in half an hour. I can't talk here." Without saying another word, he walked quickly back to the main hallway. Camila opened the paper when she turned the corner in the hallway. The letters trembled, as if her hand were very nervous. It said, "Something very bad is happening. Innocent people are paying dearly. I can't take it anymore. Meet me, but not here." She folded the paper again, put it in her pocket, and felt her heart beat faster. Finally, someone on the inside wanted to talk. It was an opportunity to hear the truth from someone who lived through it every day. And deep down, she already knew that what was coming could be even worse than she imagined. But she needed to know for Tomas, for Isabel, For all the children that no one had the courage to defend. Camila left the hospital with steady steps, but inside her heart was beating very fast. The paper was in her pocket, carefully folded, as if it were a little piece of hope. She knew that this encounter could change everything. She drove to the indicated parking lot, a place far from the main entrance where there was almost no light. She stopped the car and waited outside, leaning against the door, arms crossed, looking around. After a few minutes, the nurse arrived. He came with his head down, wearing a sweatshirt over his uniform, as if he didn't want to be recognized. He looked around, took a deep breath, and walked toward her. Camila looked at him firmly, but without aggression. She knew he needed to feel safe. "I'm here. You can say whatever you want," she said in a firm but calm voice. He looked around again, put his hands in his pockets, and began to speak in a low voice, almost whispering. "I've been working there for 5 years. I've seen a lot of bad things, but in the last few months, everything has gotten out of control. They created a hidden protocol, like a secret plan, to end treatment for patients that insurance no longer wants to pay for." Camila felt a chill down her spine. She didn't say anything, just put her hand in her pocket and pressed the record button on her tape recorder. She left it on. She needed evidence. "That's how it is," he continued. "When they say the patient has no chance or that it's too expensive, they say they're going to send them to a special area. But that area doesn't even exist. They just give them something that stops everything, an injection that shuts down the body. Then they say it was organ failure or respiratory arrest." He started to cry, took off his cap, and ran his hand over his face, trembling. "I think that happened to 3 elderly people, and then to a 6-year-old girl. And now, it was Isabel. I saw the 2 of them come in with the syringe. One is a doctor, the other is a guard. They don't care. They say it's for the good of the hospital so it doesn't go bankrupt, but we know it's for money. It's all about money." Camila approached him slowly, put her hand on his shoulder, and asked carefully, "Why are you telling me this now?" He sniffed and wiped his face with his hand, because Isabel had smiled at me the day before. She said to me, "Sir, you're cool." She thanked me for bringing her juice, and now she's gone. I can't sleep, miss. I hear her name all the time. I feel guilty. They force us to keep quiet. They threaten us. They say they can ruin our lives if we talk, but I can't take it anymore." Camila looked him straight in the eye. "You were brave, very brave. What you did today can save other children. It can change everything." He shook his head, still in tears, and said, "Just please take care of the boy, Tomas. He saw everything, and now they're afraid of him." Camila pressed the recorder in her pocket. For the first time, she had something real in her hands. It was no longer just the word of a child in shock. It was the testimony of someone who saw it from the inside, of someone who participated without wanting to, of someone who now cried for having remained silent. And at that moment, she knew that the fight was just beginning. But now, with the truth in her hands and courage in her heart, she would not stop. For Isabel, for Tomas, for all those who never had the opportunity to tell their own story. Luciana spent the whole day with a lump in her throat, pacing back and forth in her sister's house, where Tomas was resting. After everything she heard from her son and the police officer Camila, her heart could no longer bear so much pain and doubt. She felt that life had slipped through her fingers without her being able to do anything about it. But inside her, there was still a flame burning, a mother's strength that cried out, "I need to see my daughter. I need to know if it's true." At the end of the afternoon, she decided to return to the hospital. She arrived at the reception desk with steady steps, her voice trembling, but full of pain. "I want to see my daughter. I want to see Isabel now. I'm her mother. I have the right." The receptionist, with a tired and distant look, replied coldly, "Are you Luciana Romero?" "Yes, I am, and I want to see my daughter. I want to say goodbye to her." The woman typed something into the computer, looked at the screen for a few seconds, and replied, "The body of the patient, Isabel Romero, was cremated this morning." Luciana stood frozen, as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. She blinked several times, trying to understand what she had just heard. Cremated? They said the body would be released for burial. They sent me home to prepare everything. I didn't even see her face. I didn't even say goodbye. The woman was silent for a few seconds. Then she replied again in that automatic tone that hurts more than it helps. The procedure was authorized by hospital protocol. You must wait to be contacted by the responsible department for more information. Luciana lost strength in her legs and fell to her knees right there in the hospital hallway. People passing by looked at her with pity, but no one approached her. She began to cry loudly, screaming with a broken voice. They cremated my daughter without telling me. How could they do that to a mother? How? I just wanted to see her one last time. That's all. A nurse tried to approach her, but Luciana pushed her away with her hand. She was beside herself, and rightly so. They took everything from me. Everything. My daughter. My chance to say goodbye. They denied me even that. Camila arrived shortly after, alerted by a worker who was moved by the scene. She found Luciana on the floor hugging her knees. Crying like a child, she ran to her and held her lovingly. "Calm down, Mrs. Luciana. I'm here. I'm with you." Luciana clung to her, crying on the police officer's shoulder. "They killed my baby, and now they've made the body disappear. Why, Camila? Why?" Camila had no answer. She just closed her eyes, swallowed her tears, and promised deep in her soul that she would not leave it at that, because no one should lose a child that way, because no mother deserves to live without answers, because Isabel was more than a name on a piece of paper. She was a sweet girl, full of life, who smiled even when she was sick, and she deserved much more than a hidden cremation. She deserved justice, and Camila was going to seek it, even if it was the last thing she did in her life. The next day, still shaken by what she saw at the hospital, Camila went to a meeting point she had agreed upon with the same nurse who gave her the paper. He was nervous, looking around constantly with a folder in his hands. When he saw Camila, he went straight to her and handed her the envelope with trembling hands. "This is all I could copy. If they find out I took this, I'm done for, but I can't keep pretending nothing happened." Camila opened the envelope right there on the hood of the car. Inside was a handwritten list with several names, ages, rooms, admission dates, and a column labeled "Release." It was like a chart made by someone who wanted to keep the information outside the hospital system. She read it slowly, her heart beating faster with each name. "Did you take this list from the system?" she asked, even though she already knew the answer. The nurse lowered his head in shame. "These are the patients they call hopeless. When the insurance company or the hospital says they've spent too much, they apply that protocol. They say it's to take away their pain, but you and I know it's to end them." Camila took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. She scanned the names. Elderly people over 90, men and women in their 40s with chronic illnesses, until in the middle of the sheet her heart stopped for a second. There was Isabel Romero, 8 years old. In the release column, the date, the very day Tomas escaped. She took the pen out of her uniform pocket and circled the name tightly, as if marking something on her soul. She looked at the nurse with tears in her eyes. "It's her. She's here. And the date matches everything Tomas said. He saw it. He was telling the truth all along." The nurse looked at the floor and replied in a low voice. "I tried not to look. I tried to fool myself into thinking it was just protocol, but now seeing her name there broke me." Camila clutched the sheet in her hands. The pain that was already great turned to rage, a clear rage with a name and surname. It was no longer just a rare case. It was a planned, cruel action, where lives became numbers, and girls like Isabel became statistics. But she wasn't going to let that happen. Isabel was going to have a name, a story, and justice. "Thank you for this," she said to the nurse. "Now we have something real. Now they won't be able to hide behind excuses." She returned to the car with the list in her hands and looked up at the sky before starting the engine. The sun was slowly rising, and at that moment she silently promised, "Isabel, I'll see this through to the end. For you, for your mom, for your brother, and for all those who left in silence. You will never be forgotten." Luciana spent the night without sleeping, sitting on the couch at her sister's house with Tomas asleep beside her. She stared into space. Her gaze was fixed and lost. She had no more tears left to cry. Her head kept spinning, remembering her daughter's face, the sound of her laughter, the stories they told before bedtime. But now there was only silence. and a pain so great that it seemed to fill her chest. Camila arrived early with the list in her hands. She sat down next to Luciana without saying anything at first, just staying there, respecting the moment. When she handed her the paper, it took Luciana a while to understand. Then, when she saw her daughter's name marked in red ink, her hands trembled. "They took her away from me," she whispered, "without warning me, without letting me say goodbye." Camila held her hand firmly. "They won't get away with this, but for that we have to talk. Show everything. I have a journalist I trust. He will listen to us. He will show the world who Isabel was and what they did to her." Luciana took a deep breath. She felt fear, shame, anger, but she also felt a strength within her that only mothers have. She dried her eyes, stood up, and said in a low but determined voice, "Let's go." A few hours later, they were in front of the camera in a small local news studio. The journalist was a straightforward man who spoke clearly and treated Luciana with respect and care. The video had no cuts or editing. It was raw, real. Luciana told everything from Isabel's days in the hospital to the moment they told her that the body had already been cremated. She told of Tomas's escape, of what he saw, of the list Camila got with the names of the discarded patients. With every word, the pain showed in her eyes, but so did her courage. Camila appeared alongside her, confirmed the facts, and explained the investigation. The journalist ended the video with a phrase that no one forgot. "This story is not just about the Romero family. It is about all of us. Because tomorrow it could be your child, your mother, someone you love, and silence is the worst crime of all." The video was uploaded at night. Within a few hours it went viral. Thousands of people shared it, commented on it, and became angry. Comments such as, "This cannot be left like this," "Justice for Isabel," "The truth must come out," filled social media. The next day, the hospital released an official statement. It was cold, emotionless. They said they respected the family's grief, but that they were facing a situation of poorly processed mourning, that they were victims of a smear campaign, that there was no secret protocol or anything out of the ordinary. But the statement only fueled people's anger more, because now it wasn't just Luciana and Tomas. It was thousands of voices saying together, "We believe them." Camila watched everything from afar, her heart heavy but full of hope. She knew the war wasn't won, but for the first time, the truth had a name, a face, and a voice, and the whole world was listening. Camila was already neck-deep in that investigation. Every day, more questions arose, but so did more strength. She knew she was on the right track. She was just missing one more piece of that painful puzzle. And then, on a quiet Monday afternoon, she received a call on her cell phone. The voice on the other end was trembling. It was a simple woman who spoke softly, as if she were afraid someone would hear her. "Are you the one investigating the case of the girl Isabel?" Camila asked. She replied firmly, "Yes, that's me." "Who's speaking?" "Me. I'm Dolores. I work as a cleaner at the hospital. I work the early morning shift. I saw something that night." Camila closed the living room door, sat down, and said, "Tell me, Dolores. Tell me everything. I'm here to listen." The woman took a deep breath, remained silent for a few seconds, and then began to speak. "It was around 3:00 in the morning. I was cleaning the back hallway, the one that connects the children's ward to the side exit. I take that shortcut. I was pushing my cleaning cart when I saw two men pushing a stretcher with a little girl on it. She wasn't dead. I swear on my daughter's life that she moved her hand very slowly, but she moved it." Camila closed her eyes for a second. Her chest tightened. "Are you sure it was Isabel?" she asked. She had a little red bow in her hair. "I remember because I thought, poor thing, so little. And she was small, thin, like the one in the photo I saw later on TV. They were in a hurry. One of them even gave me a dirty look when he saw me. They didn't say anything. They just pushed past." "Oh, then where did they go?" Camila asked, her heart pounding. "Through the side exit, that door that almost no one uses. I think they put her in a car. I heard the sound of the engine. Then nothing. I went back to the hallway as if I hadn't seen anything. But now, after what the mother said on TV, after what the boy said, I can't keep quiet anymore." Camila put her hand to her chest, overcome with emotion. That simple, humble woman had seen everything and kept it to herself out of fear. But now, she had finally found the courage. Doña Dolores doesn't know how important this is. You saw Isabel alive. That changes everything. I need you to say this in a testimony. Maybe. On the other end of the line, there was silence for a few seconds. And then, in a firm voice, "Yes, I can. I'll do it for her. For that girl. No mother should have to go through this." Camila hung up the phone with tears in her eyes. That call was more than proof. It was hope. It was the cry of those who had never been heard. And now, more than ever, it was clear to her that Isabel was alive when she left the hospital, and someone was going to have to pay for all of this, because this time, the truth was not going to be buried. After Dolores's testimony, Camila couldn't sleep. She spent the whole night remembering everything, organizing papers, trying to put the pieces together. The cleaning lady had confirmed what Tomás had been saying from the beginning. Isabel had been taken away alive on a stretcher through a side exit in the middle of the night. That left no room for doubt. It was time to act. The next day, with the support of other police officers who were now also convinced that there was something serious behind it all, Camila obtained authorization to investigate a suspicious address, a place that appeared in an old complaint from months ago as a nursing home for patients without families, but nothing there was legally registered. It was a large house, far from the city, in a neighborhood where the streets were not even paved. When they arrived at the place, Camila and the other officers knocked on the gate. A man dressed in white opened it and said he was the caretaker. He tried to remain calm, but his voice was shaking. He said it was a simple shelter, an alternative refuge, but there was no name on the facade, no signs. Nothing official. Camila asked to enter. The man hesitated. That was enough for her to give a nod. 2 police officers pushed open the gate and entered. What they found inside broke their hearts. The place was clean, but cold, too quiet. In the beds were children of various ages, some looking sick, others with a lost look in their eyes. None of them spoke much, and 3 of them were in wheelchairs. A girl of about 6 was hugging a dirty doll and staring at the wall. A boy with glasses and marks on his arm trembled when someone approached him. Camila approached slowly, crouched down near the girl with the doll, and asked kindly, "Do you remember your name, sweetie?" The girl didn't answer. She just hugged the doll tighter. Another police officer called Camila urgently. He had found a notebook with names, ages, and small medical notes. Among the names, some were crossed out in red pen, as if they had been discarded. Camila clutched the notebook tightly. She felt she was close. She went from bed to bed, talking to the children, trying to understand. And then one of them, a thin girl with a blue bow in her hair, tugged at her sleeve and spoke softly. The one with the red bow. She was here, the girl who cried at night. She was calling for someone named Tomás, but they took her away in a black car at dawn. Camila froze. Her heart was beating very fast. "Are you sure? Did she have a red bow?" The girl nodded, and a spark of hope lit up inside Camila. Isabel had been there. She was alive. She was crying. She was calling for her brother, and then they took her away again. That confirmed everything. Camila hugged the girl, who cringed at the unexpected gesture, as if she no longer knew what affection was. "Thank you, little one. You helped me more than you can imagine." In that clandestine shelter, where children forgotten by the world were hidden, far from the eyes of society, Camila felt the pain of those who were never heard, but she also felt courage growing stronger within her. Isabel could still be alive, and now she knew where to go next. She wasn't going to stop, because the truth had already begun to come out, and she was going to see it through to the end, whatever the cost. Camila stared for a few seconds, trying to digest what she had just seen in that shelter. The rescued children were taken away carefully, protected by social workers, fed right there with bread and hot milk, which the police improvised in the kitchen of the house. She went to a makeshift room where 3 of those children were huddled in a corner with thin blankets. Tomás arrived shortly after, brought in by a trusted agent. When he entered and did not see Isabel, his heart almost stopped. He looked at each little face, searching for the one he knew so well, the little face he had protected since she was a baby. Those lively eyes, that smile, even when she was in pain, but she was not there. He approached Camila and asked in a low voice, trying not to cry, She is here. Camila looked down, took his hands and replied gently, No, Tomas. Isabel was here, but she's gone now. We'll find her. I promise. It was as if the ground had disappeared. Tomas slowly walked away, sat down in a corner of the room, and began to cry softly. The tears wouldn't stop falling. He covered his face with his hands and said between sobs, What if it's too late, Camila? What if I can never see her again? Camila went to him, knelt down, and hugged him tightly. She felt the pain of that child pierce her chest like a knife. He was trembling in her arms, and all she could do was hold him tight. We're going to find her, Tomas. You've trusted me until now. Please don't give up. I'm with you. I won't let her disappear. And then, from across the room, one of the rescued girls, very small, with big, frightened eyes, gently tugged at Camila's sleeve. Ma'am, she whispered weakly, the girl with the red bow. She was here. I saw her. She was crying in the night. She was saying a boy's name. I think it was Tomas. Camila's heart leapt. She turned immediately, her eyes wide open. Do you remember what happened to her? The girl hesitated a little, then pointed toward the window. They took her away in a black car very early. It was still dark. 2 men laid her down in the back seat. They said they were taking her somewhere else. Camila jumped up. That was the clue she had been missing, the trail she needed to follow. She looked at Tomas and said in a firm voice, full of hope, She's alive, Tomas. And now we know where to look. The boy wiped his eyes, took a deep breath, and slowly got up. The fear was still inside him, but that little bit of hope was enough to keep going. He took Camila's hand tightly and replied, Then let's go. I won't stop until I find my sister. And at that moment, 2 broken hearts decided to move forward together, ready to find the truth, no matter how hard it was, because no one could extinguish their love. Camila spent the entire night watching the recordings from the street cameras near the hospital. She was exhausted, her eyes red from the effort, but she didn't want to stop. She knew that somewhere in those images, the answer was hidden. Every second was a piece of the truth, until, at around 3:20 in the morning, a camera at a pharmacy recorded a black car discreetly leaving the side of the hospital. It had no siren, no ambulance markings. It was an ordinary car, but what caught her attention was how quickly it left, without stopping for a moment, as if fleeing from something. Camila paused the image. The license plate was partially covered in mud, but the first few numbers were visible. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She wrote them down and sent them to the police system. Hours later, a traffic patrol confirmed it. That car was seen by a camera on the highway to Querétaro, passing through a toll booth at 4:05 in the morning. At that moment, Camila grabbed her cell phone and called Luciana. Mrs. Luciana, we found the car. They saw it going to Querétaro. There's an old clinic nearby, one of those that hardly ever gets checked. We're going there. Do you and Tomas want to come with me? On the other end of the line, Luciana's voice didn't waver. Of course we'll go. I'll go to the end for my daughter. Shortly after, the 3 of them were in the car. Camila drove seriously while Luciana and Tomas sat in the back seat. The boy held his sister's bracelet in his hands, as he always did. The silence in the car said it all. It was the silence of hope, of hidden pain, of painful waiting. The road was long, the sky was cloudy, and time felt slower than ever. Sometimes Tomas would look out the window and ask, Do you think she's still there? Camila would look at him in the rearview mirror with a heavy heart and reply, If she's there, we'll find her. If she's not there, we'll find out where they took her. But I promise you, Tomas, we won't come back without knowing where Isabel is. Luciana put her hand on her son's shoulder and said with eyes full of emotion, She's waiting for us. I feel it in my heart. A mother knows these things. And in that car, pain, love, and courage mingled in silence. It was a journey that could change everything. The chance to find a daughter, a sister, a little girl who was torn from her family for no good reason. They didn't know what they would find ahead, but they knew they were no longer alone, and that together, they would go wherever necessary to bring Isabel back. The road to Querétaro seemed endless. With every kilometer, the anxiety grew, squeezing their hearts. The silence inside the car was broken only by the noise of the engine and their deep breaths. Camila drove steadily, always looking ahead, but with her mind full of memories of everything they had experienced up to that point. Luciana held a small photo of her daughter, taken before she was admitted to the hospital. Tomas, his face pressed against the glass, did not let go of his sister's bracelet for a second. That bracelet became the symbol of the promise he made to himself, not to rest until he found Isabel. When they arrived at the clinic entrance, Camila stopped the car and stared at the building for a few seconds. It was old, half hidden among trees, with tall windows that were all closed. There were no signs or clear identification. Everything there looked too discreet. Carefully, she got out first, went to the reception desk, and introduced herself as a security agent. The man who attended to her became nervous. Camila then showed him a document and said in a firm voice, "We have a report of a minor being held here without authorization. We are going in, and if you try to stop us, we will come back with a warrant and the police." The man hesitated, stammered something, and finally let her pass. When Luciana and Tomas entered behind her, the atmosphere became tense. The hallway smelled of strong medicine and disinfectant. Camila got straight to the point. "Where are the children?" she asked a nurse. The nurse tried to resist, but the authority in Camila's voice was impossible to ignore. She pointed to an area in the back. It was when they entered that white, silent room that everything stopped. In a corner, lying on a bed with thin sheets, was Isabel, thinner with dark circles under her eyes, her hair tied back carelessly, but alive. Her eyes opened slowly when she heard the door. It took her a few seconds to understand who was there, but when she saw Tomas, something in her lit up, a sparkle in her eyes, a light that had seemed extinguished until that moment. She smiled weakly, but with all her soul. "I told you, you wouldn't leave me," she whispered softly. Tomas ran to the bed, threw himself at her feet, and cried like never before. He grabbed her hand so tightly that it seemed he would never let go. He repeated, "I'm here, Isa. I came for you. I kept my promise. I told you I would find you." Luciana approached slowly. When she saw her daughter alive, albeit weak, her body couldn't take it. She fell to her knees beside the bed and began to cry silently. Tears streamed down her face as she kissed her daughter's hand. She touched her face gently. "My daughter, my little girl, they took you away from me, but God didn't let them erase you. I'm here, my Isa. I'm here." Isabel looked at them both with eyes full of tears and whispered softly, almost like a wish, "I just wanted to see the sky again." Camila, standing in the doorway, could no longer hold back. She turned her face away and discreetly wiped her tears. That scene was the best answer she could have received. That reunion was everything Tomas had dreamed of, everything Luciana had asked for, everything Isabel deserved. At that moment, no pain could overcome love. And in that little room, with no name, hope finally spoke louder. The days that followed the reunion were intense. Isabel was alive, but still very weak. She needed care, affection, and time to understand everything that had happened. Tomas never left her side. He slept in a chair next to the bed, holding his sister's hand. Luciana took care of them both as best she could, with the love of a mother who had almost lost everything. And Camila didn't stop. Now that she was certain, now that Isabel was there alive, she knew she couldn't let it all end in silence. With the testimony of the nurse, the cleaning lady, the rescued children, and now with the record of Isabel's presence at the clinic, Camila put everything together. She went straight to the prosecutor in charge of the case, with the evidence in hand. She presented every document, every recording, every name involved. The justice system could no longer pretend that it was an exaggeration or a lie. A few days later, the news spread everywhere. 5 people were arrested: 2 doctors, a head nurse, the hospital's finance manager, and the CEO himself. The CEO's arrest was the most anticipated. He tried to flee the country in the early hours of the morning. He already had tickets purchased, suitcases packed, and false documents. But he was detained at the airport by agents who already had an arrest warrant. The escape attempt only made his situation worse. When they took him away in handcuffs with his head bowed, one of the journalists shouted, "Is it true that you received money for testing drugs on patients?" He did not respond, but in the documents they found, there was clear evidence of millions involved with pharmaceutical companies that paid for each experiment performed on people who did not know what they were being given. Elderly people, children, patients who had no hope left. They were all treated like numbers in cold contracts. Camila watched everything closely. She watched the first hearing with tears in her eyes. She felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief at seeing the guilty parties in prison. Anger at everything they didn't do. At every life that was taken before its time. Luciana watched the special report on TV with her hand on her chest, breathing deeply. When she saw the director's face as he was put into the police car, she whispered, "This is for you, my daughter, and for all the others who couldn't come back." Tomas, next to his mother, squeezed her hand and looked at his sister sleeping peacefully on the couch. And there, in that simple living room, with the smell of food and the television on, a family that had almost been destroyed began to breathe again. It was not the end of the pain, but it was the beginning of justice. And this time, no one was going to silence the truth. Weeks after everything came to light and the guilty parties were arrested, the city felt different. Isabel's case had touched the hearts of so many people that it was the only thing anyone talked about. Her name became a symbol of courage, struggle, and justice. And the name of Camila, the police officer who did not turn a blind eye, began to be remembered fondly by people she did not even know. One day, Camila received an invitation from her workplace. It was a small ceremony, attended only by co-workers, a few representatives of the justice system, and a handful of authorities. She almost didn't want to go. She said she had only done her duty, but Tomas insisted, with his sincere way of speaking. "Please, Aunt Camila, you saved my sister. You saved our family." So she went to the hall. It was simple, with many chairs in rows, a table with flowers in one corner, and a panel with photos of the important moments of the investigation. When Camila entered, everyone stood up. She was surprised. She felt shy. She didn't like the spotlight, but there she felt the warmth of sincere applause. It was applause of gratitude. One of the local police chiefs took the microphone and said, "Today we recognize one of the greatest displays of humanity I have ever seen in this corporation. Officer Camila not only did her job, she saved a life, she saved a family, and she showed that when someone decides not to remain silent, everything can change." Camila was called to the stage. She received a certificate, a symbolic medal, but what really touched her heart was seeing Luciana and Tomas in the front row, smiling with tears in their eyes. Isabel, still fragile, was in her mother's arms with a little paper flower she had made herself. Camila took the microphone with trembling hands, took a deep breath, and spoke with a broken voice. "I really appreciate this, but I didn't do this for a medal. I did it because a little girl believed in me, and when a child looks at you with hope, you can't let them down. I did it because Tomas had the courage to tell the truth, and because Isabel deserved to come home. I was just the means to an end, but they were the ones who had the strength." The audience was silent for a few seconds, until someone started clapping. Soon everyone was on their feet, moved. Camila came down from the stage and went straight to Tomas, who hugged her tightly with a shy smile. "Thank you, Aunt Camila. Now you're like part of our family." She smiled, ran her hand through his hair, and whispered, "And I always will be." That day, Camila didn't just win a medal, she won something much bigger. She won the certainty that it's worth believing in people, that it's worth fighting for, even when everything seems against you. Because sometimes all a child needs is for an adult to believe in them, and she believed until the end. It was a sunny morning, one of those mornings that seem to say that the worst is over. After everything he had been through, Tomas was finally returning to school with his new backpack on his back, clean sneakers, and his heart. Well, his heart still hurt, but it was much stronger now. He looked at his mom before entering the classroom, and she gave him a gentle smile, full of pride. Isabel was getting better every day, and that gave him the strength he needed to keep going. The school looked smaller than he remembered. The hallways, the desks, his friends, everything was there as if time had not passed. But Tomas knew he was no longer the same. He had grown up inside in a way that no child should have to grow up. When he entered the classroom, the teacher gave him a big hug, one of those hugs that say so much without saying anything. And then she said with a smile, "Tomas, we missed you so much. It's so good to have you here with us again. Today, to start off gently, I want to ask you all a question. What do you want to be when you grow up?" The children began to answer. Soccer player, doctor, teacher, chef, firefighter. And when it was his turn, the classroom fell silent. They knew he had been through something very difficult, but no one knew exactly what. Tomas slowly got up, stood in front of the class, took a deep breath, and answered in a firm but emotional voice, "I want to be a police officer." The teacher was surprised, but she smiled and asked, "That's wonderful, Tomas. Why?" He looked at everyone, and his eyes began to shine. The words came from his heart, simple and sincere. "Because I saw what happens when no one listens to a child. I saw how much it hurts when they want to silence the truth, and I want to help those who need it. Camila helped me. She believed in me, and because of her, my sister is alive. I want to save people too." The teacher was moved and put her hand to her chest. The classroom was silent for a few seconds, until a girl at the back stood up and said, "I want to be like her too." Tomas sat down again, and at that moment, something inside him settled. He knew he still had a long way to go, but now he had a path, a purpose. And in the midst of a classroom full of children's dreams, his shone the brightest, because it came from pain, but also from love, because it was born of loss, but also of hope, and no one could ever take that away from him again. Isabel returned home with her body still weak, walking slowly, sleeping a lot, but with her eyes more alive than ever. That look that had seemed dull in the clinic was now gaining color every day. It was as if she were being reborn. Luciana prepared a little corner just for her in the living room, with cushions, toys, and colored pencils. And it was there that Isabel began to learn how to live again. She didn't talk much. Sometimes she just sat quietly looking out the window. But when she picked up the pencils, everything changed. Her strokes were still soft, but full of feeling. The first drawings were simple: a house, a tree, a heart, but they all had something in common. There was always a blue sky, a wide-open, clear sky, and almost always next to the little house or under the tree, there he was, a brown-haired boy, smiling. Tomas. Luciana, her heart aching, looked at each drawing with tears in her eyes. One day she knelt down next to her daughter and asked her, "Honey, why is it always a blue sky?" Isabel, in her sweet way, replied softly, "Because that's what I wanted to see most, the sky again." When she was in that place, she would close her eyes and think about what the sky looked like from our window. I thought about Tomas, and drawing now helps me remember that I'm back. Tomas listened to everything, sitting in the armchair, trying to hide what he was feeling, but what he wanted most was just that, to see his sister smile, even if only a little. To see that despite everything she had been through, she still had beauty in her heart. Isabel had lasting effects. She had difficulty walking. Sometimes she forgot simple words, but no one could see her sparkle. She learned again to laugh at the little things, to feel the wind on her face, to play with water in the yard, and with each new drawing stuck on the living room wall, the family felt that a little piece of the girl she used to be was coming back. Camila visited her often. She brought new paper, different pencils, coloring books, and Isabel would run to show her drawings with pride. "Look, Aunt Camila, this is the day Tomas found me, and this is us in the sky." Camila smiled, trying not to cry, because there, on that simple piece of paper, was everything that story meant: pain, courage, love, and a new beginning. Isabel was alive, she was home, and now, even though she didn't understand everything she had been through, she was bringing color back to the world, with the bluest sky ever seen. As the months passed, Isabel gradually improved. Her strength was impressive. Every new step, Every word that returned was like a miracle happening inside the house. Tomas smiled again with more peace of mind. Camila was still present as part of the family, but the one who felt the change in her heart the most was Luciana. After everything they had been through, she knew she couldn't let it all be forgotten. She couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. She knew that many other mothers had lost their children in silence, that many might never have the opportunity she had to be reunited with her daughter alive, to hear her voice again, to see her sleeping peacefully. And it was thinking about those mothers that she made a decision. One Saturday morning, while they were having breakfast, Luciana looked at Camila and said, "I want to do something to help other mothers, to make their voices heard, to show them that they are not alone. I can't change the past, but I can use what we've been through so that other families don't suffer in silence." Camila put her cup aside and looked at her with respect. "And what do you have in mind?" Luciana took a deep breath, looked at Isabel, who was drawing in a corner of the room, and replied with a full heart, "I want to create a foundation, a space to welcome, listen, and guide, to help mothers who have lost their children due to mistakes, negligence, or medical abandonment. A place where their pain is heard, where it is transformed into struggle, into action, into care." Tomas looked up. "Interesting. And what will it be called?" Luciana smiled with tears in her eyes and replied with a broken voice, "It will be called the Isabel Foundation." The name was spoken with such truth that it seemed to embrace everyone in that room. Isabel heard it and turned with shining eyes. She went to her mother and said softly in a sweet voice, "It's going to be beautiful, Mommy, just like the sky in my drawings." The foundation started small, in a borrowed room with simple furniture and a mural full of photos of children, paper flowers, and phrases of hope. But it didn't take long to grow. Isabel's story had already reached many people, and now Luciana was sought out by mothers from all over the country. Mothers who didn't want money or revenge. They wanted to be heard. They wanted their children to be remembered with dignity. Luciana listened to each one calmly. She hugged them, cried with them, and showed them that it was possible to start over, that they could turn their pain into something beautiful. And every time she walked into that little room with her daughter's name on the door, she knew she was honoring the life she had almost lost. Isabel had returned, but many others had not. And now she cared for those others as if they were also part of her. And so the Isabel Foundation became more than just a place. It became a hug for those who thought they were alone, and a reminder that even when all seems lost, love can still change the world. It was a quiet afternoon, one of those with a gentle breeze moving the curtains and the smell of cake in the oven. Camila had stopped by Luciana's house for a quick visit. She wanted to see how Isabel was doing, chat a little with Tomas, and have coffee with the friend that life had given her in the midst of chaos. She was already part of the family, and everyone there welcomed her with affectionate looks and warm hugs. Isabel, now with a rosier face and brighter eyes, waited for Camila sitting on the couch with her little hands hidden behind her back. When the police officer entered, she ran to hug her in that shy but loving way. Camila bent down, hugged her tightly, and said with a smile, "You're getting stronger every day, huh? You're going to end up being braver than your brother." Isabel let out a soft giggle, looked at her mom, then at Tomas, and then took a carefully folded piece of paper from behind her back. It was simple, handmade, with small, shaky letters. She handed the paper to Camila, holding it with both hands. "It's for you, Aunt Camila. I wrote it all by myself." Camila took the paper delicately, as if it were a treasure. She sat down slowly, unfolded it lovingly, and began to read silently. The words were written in blue pencil, the edges decorated with simple drawings of hearts and a little house with a bright blue sky. "Thank you for listening to my brother when no one else did. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for bringing me home. I love you very much." Tears slowly welled up in the corners of her eyes. She looked at Isabel and saw much more than a child. She saw a survivor, a girl who, despite having been through so much, was still able to give thanks, to love, to write from the heart. "I'm the one who's grateful, Isa," said Camila, her voice breaking. "You and Tomas taught me that courage has no age, and that when you truly believe in someone, You can change everything. Luciana watched the scene with shining eyes, and Tomas, leaning against the wall, smiled proudly at his sister. Camila kept the letter with great affection. One day she said she was going to frame it and hang it on the wall of her office. But deep down, she knew that those words were already engraved within her, because there was no gift more valuable than that. It was living proof that truth had won, that love had endured, and that even in the deepest silence, someone had had the courage to listen. The sun was slowly setting, painting the sky with soft colors between orange and pink. The neighborhood square was quiet, with a few dry leaves scattered on the ground and the distant sound of children playing. It was a sunset that seemed made especially for that moment. Camila sat on a wooden bench watching from afar. She was there, but she wanted them to have that moment just for themselves. Luciana, wearing a simple dress and a calm smile, walked slowly with Isabel by her side, holding her hand. The girl wore a new bow in her hair, red like the one in the hospital, but now clean, pretty, full of life, full of Tomas. He came a little behind, carrying a folded drawing that his sister had made, the three of them together, holding hands, with a blue sky full of stars. When they reached the center of the square, Isabel let go of her mother's hand and ran to Tomas, hugging him tightly around the waist. He bent down and lifted her up carefully. Luciana approached and, without saying a word, hugged them both with her arms, closing that circle of love. It was a long hug, a hug full of silence, but also full of everything. It held nostalgia, the fear that had passed, the pain that still lived within them. But above all, it held gratitude for being there together, alive. Starting over, Camila watched from afar, with eyes full of tears. Her chest felt light, as if she could finally breathe deeply. She knew she couldn't fix the world, but she knew that in that little piece of it, she had made a difference. Tomas raised his eyes to the sky, which now shone with the last light of day, and said in a calm voice, as if speaking to his own heart, now everything was clear, and it was, because although the road was full of pain, loss, and darkness, their love was stronger. And when there is true love, when someone has the courage to fight for the other, even the cloudiest sky can shine again. And there, on that simple sunset, three wounded hearts showed that the light always returns. All it takes is for someone not to give up. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And click the video on your screen for another powerful story that has moved many to tears, made people reflect on life, and even changed the way they see the world. See you there.